Hey, welcome to Kenji's Corner. So, how many of you have seen Roger Rabbit? Definitely a fun experimental film that combined live action with fluid animation, partnered with a gritty noir story about death, grief, comedy, and finding purpose in life. It was a box office smash, bringing in $350 million on its opening weekend with a $50 million budget. Jesus, inflation is bad if the budget of Roger Rabbit looks modest by today's standards. Imagine if a late 80s Hollywood producer saw the budget for the Electric State. They'd probably be bricks. Either way, it's a fantastic film that people still see as a triumph of experimental filmmaking to this day, sparking the imagination of kids and adults alike. But we're not talking about that movie. No, we're talking about another fun experimental film that combines live action with fluid animation, partnered with a gritty story about death, grief, comedy, and finding purpose in life. I'm talking about If. Yeah, the Ryan Reynolds movie with the home for imaginary friends on Coney Island. Yeah, that one. Anybody? Anyone else see this movie besides me? Yeah, we're talking about Cool World. So most people consecutively agree that Cool World was not a good movie. And rightfully so. It has bizarre animation, forced and awkward acting, a frantic and chaotic tone that clashes with its story and flip-flops between what genre it wants to be, and a convoluted mess of a narrative that makes no sense to anyone except the writers and its director, Ralph Bakshi. Maybe not even Bakshi, but we'll get into that later. Yet, here's a confession to you all, especially for those of you who saw my last review and, oh fuck, it's been a long time. I actually kind of like this movie. Why, you might ask? I don't know. All the criticisms toward this movie are valid and in-your-face apparent, and I'll probably still make fun of it for some pretty easy jabs, just like every critic does. Yet, there's something about this movie that keeps me coming back, even after I watched it 15 years ago when I heard the Nostalgia Critic talk about it.
This is a horrible movie. It makes no sense, the acting is horrible, and nothing about it is funny or dramatic. But boy was it fucked up, creating a city of faces, a million violent residents, and just to make it as surreal as possible, Brad Pitt.
Hopefully I'll be able to answer the question of why by the end of this video. So until then, let's start with the plot. If you can call it that. So when I went to go watch this movie again, I rented it from Amazon, and it gave me the following description on the opening page. Cool World. When Jack Deeves was behind bars, he found escape by creating Cool World, a cartoon series featuring a vixen named Holly Wood. The flesh becomes weaker than ink, however, as Holly takes human form in Las Vegas. That shit doesn't even scratch the surface of how batshit insane this movie is. Okay? I'm gonna try to explain both the plot and the main characters as quickly as I can because these two elements are joined at the hip and we've got a lot more to talk about. Though I'm probably still gonna overindulge and over-detail, but we'll see how we go. Let's get started. Y'all ready for this? Cool World follows several characters, one of whom is Frank Harris, played by Brad Pitt, a World War II veteran who returns home to Vegas in 1945 and reunites with his mother. God, can't you tell how much he loves his mother? It sure would be a shame if something bad happened to her. Shortly after returning home, Frank takes his mama out on a motorcycle ride, as most boys tend to do with their mothers, and gets into a terrible accident as his bike hits a pair of drunk drivers, resulting in his mom's death. As we see a sad scene of Frank's mom being carted into an ambulance, we cut immediately to a cue-balled cartoon scientist creating an extra-dimensional portal from this glowing spike thing.
Oh, well, it works. My spike works.
This movie has a bit of a pacing issue, but don't worry about it. It's only going to get worse from here. A grief-riddled Frank cries for his mom and somehow, and I do mean somehow, is transported into the titular Cool World, a strange dimension filled with abrasive cartoon-like beings called Doodles. The scientist from before, Dr. Whiskers, formally meets Frank and helps console him about his mother's death. You know, put it very gently for this man who's been through one of the most traumatic and mind-breaking scenario you can think of.
I'm sorry about your mother.
Just says he's sorry and shrugs. What a fucking dick. I mean, considering how aggressive and sadistic the other denizens of Cool World are, that's practically getting a hug in their culture. Frank should be so lucky. I can't help but feel bad for Frank Harris here. This poor man is barely listening to a word this Doc Brown wannabe is saying. He's still trying to process the loss of his mom, and now he has to deal with all these crazy cartoon psychos while being stuck in a whole other dimension. No wonder he turns into a life of crime. Wait, what? As the doctor takes Frank away, we cut to the year 1992, where we meet our second main character, Jack Deeves, played by Gabriel Byrne. He's a young indie cartoonist who is in jail for the murder of a guy in his wife's bed. Allegedly. I know that sounds really bad, but I say allegedly because only one guy brings it up. This guy.
Hey, Deeps, why don't you do a book on that guy you murdered?
We never see his wife, and no one else mentions this event again. Just this guy. We, the audience, would have no idea what Jack was in prison for otherwise. So thank you, random guy. You just helped out the audience with a bit of the plot. That's very rare in this movie. He's obsessed with one of his characters, Holly Wood, who has been drawing compulsively in his studio quality cartoonist desk that will make any Disney animator jealous, with very sharp tools in his prison cell, which I remind you, he's in prison for murder. And just a few seconds after meeting this character, the cartoon he's been drawing comes to life from the page in some weird, sketchy animation and immediately drags him to Cool World. Or rather, he teleports in against his will and he plummets from the sky like a GTA character falling out of a helicopter, yet somehow lands without a scratch as he hits the ground. Okay? He gets freaked out by all these horny, menacing doodles around him. He watches Hollywood seductively dance for a little bit, and is transported back into the real world with a look on his face that looked like he just had a panic attack. All this happened within a span of 3 minutes. A bit of a pacing issue. And the next time we see Jack, he's somehow been allowed to be released from prison and moves back into his one-story house in Las Vegas suburbia. And I know it's the same house because later on in the movie, we see this woman try to bring her daughter back to her own place because she supposedly saw Jack murder the guy who slept with his wife. And no, the movie doesn't tell you this. I had to look that up online. Also, God, how sad is it that this cartoonist with a murder rap can afford a house when some people nowadays can't even afford an apartment? But hey, maybe Jack did pretty well for himself in prison, since apparently he's been writing and drawing comics about Cool World. And somehow they become an underground hit. Is this like an OJ thing where people are just debating if Jack Deeves really killed the guy and that sensationalism is what lined his pocket? I mean, to be fair, that's not the worst thing I've seen book publishers release to the masses. I'm looking at you, Japan. Look at Jack Deeves over here being so emo about signing autographs. Or maybe Gabriel Byrne is struggling to improvise in a scene that won't cut.
Who are you? Who are you? Yes. I'm Jack Deeves. Really? I didn't realize that. Nice meeting you. Nice to meet you. Stay well. Thank you.
And other than that, you don't really get much with this character. He's grappling with the temptations of Holly and gets teleported back and forth between our world and Cool World. He gets in arguments with Brad Pitt about if he created Cool World or not, and how he can't have sex with doodles. We'll get to that later, I promise you. So on that note, let's go to our final main character, Hollywood. Hollywood is a doodle with a Marilyn Monroe aesthetic and a classic femme fatale vibe. Everyone from doodle to human, or Noid, as they're called in the movie. You get it? Noid, like humanoid. Yeah, just put them together. Yeah, it's stupid. I can't justify that. I'm sorry. Is lusting after her, except for Frank Harris. He stands on that Sigma male grind set, I'll tell you what. And there is nothing more than Holly wants than to doodle with some Noid noodle. I'm not joking. That's pretty much her whole motivation for the first half of the movie. And it's not because she's like a sex fiend or something, though that is partially it. She wants to make her way to the human world, and the only way she can do that is to become human. But she can't become human or experience true freedom or reality or whatever until she has sex with a human. Again, we'll get to the sex. It's bigger than you would think. And Jack Deeves is her ticket to becoming human. She strings him along until she lures him into her bedroom and gets intimate with him, is the nice way to put it. Even though he says a few times he shouldn't be doing this, but she does it anyway, or tries to say like, no, you really want it. No, Holly, don't do it. No, Hollywood, no! Just because you would doesn't mean you should! Oh, by the way, spoilers for the rest of the movie, if you care about spoilers for Cool World. And then she turns into 1990s Kim Basinger, and she and Jack head back to Las Vegas. She spends the rest of the movie acting like a horny Amish girl or a naive college freshman on her first spring break visit, and makes it everyone else's problem. including her partners.
Hey, she's with me! No, she's with us.
You know, for a guy who went to prison, Jack's a real f***ing dweeb. When these lounge guys drag him outside, I'm half expecting them to give him a wedgie. But finally, after about an hour, we finally see that her as she and Jack start switching back and forth between Doodle and Noid forms. She then, out of nowhere, decides the best thing to do is to go to the Union Plaza Hotel and find the fabled Spike of Power, a magical artifact that has never been discussed up until this point, which will give her enough power to truly be real or free or whatever. She even commits murder for it. Sorry, Frank. And the last 10 minutes is where the movie basically goes into half-assed storytelling and full-on lunacy.
This is your chance to make it right. It's up to you now.
Okay. This time, I'm gonna do something right.
Why is Jack so concerned about redemption now? This has never been a concern for him for the whole movie. Was there a whole story arc that was cut from the film? Or was this line meant to go to Frank until they realized that they couldn't because he's f***ing dead? Either way, Jack embraces his hero side, for lack of a better word, and becomes the primary opposition for Hollywood, who's opened a proverbial Pandora's box by stealing the Spike of Power, which we find out is the same one from the beginning of the movie, and is unleashing the primal chaotic forces of Cool World into Las Vegas. Just like how the ghosts run amok in New York in the Ghostbusters climax. I'm not kidding. Go back and watch Ghostbusters. It's 1-to-1. Absolutely shameless, I'll tell you what. It turns people into weird-looking caricatures and excuses for the animators to do this.
How does that work?
Make it stop!
Jack fights the Doodle monsters in the most violent way possible, just like he's a space marine fighting that Xeno scum, and saves the day by resisting Holly's temptations and stabbing the Spike back into the Union Plaza Hotel. Which somehow brings the Doodles, Hollywood, and himself back to Cool World. Okay. The Doctor, oh yeah, the Doctor shows up again, don't worry about it, sends Frank Harris back into Cool World. Somehow. Everyone thinks he's dead, but by the power of Deus Ex Machina, Frank comes back to life as the Vault Boy in Fallout.
Well, what happens to noids who traffic in the Cool World, Nails? When they get killed by a doodle, they become a doodle themselves.
Hot dog! Dig it! Dig me! Ba-dum-bum. Bam!
Oh my god! Oh, Nails, he's alive!
How and why? I don't know. It was never mentioned before that this could happen. This just comes out of nowhere, I assure you. I mean, there was that one moment in the beginning where we see Frank as a doodle for a split second when he first entered into Cool World. Was that meant to be foreshadowing? Because it's not. It's just a cop-out. Also, how the f*** does Lynette, the bar girl and love interest, know this pretty crucial bit of metaphysical information and not the Doctor who's been studying doodles and noids all his life? In fact, where the f*** is the Doctor anyway? He just kind of disappears after he leaves Vegas. On a no, but we're nearly at the home stretch here, so I'm just going to power through it. Frank and Lynette have a little bit of Frank's doodle partner Nails pulls a Porky Pig, and Jack and Holly are trapped in a comic book page, which for some reason is also a part of Cool World, but it's also part of a separate world within the Cool World universe, and the movie's over. The end.
But it's so confusing.
Hey guys, just wanted to let you know that this video was recorded over the course of like 3 days, so if I have like more stubble, or if my shirt is different, or if you hear background noise, that's the reason why, because I have to shoot this over the course of 3 days. So if that, hopefully that doesn't bother you too much, doesn't distract you from the rest of the video. Other than that, hope you enjoy. So this movie here is an exercise, especially the ending, man. I swear to God, every time I rewatch this movie, I always forget how draining those last 20 minutes are. Most audiences who saw this had no idea what they were watching or what to make of it.
Dude, that movie sucked. How do they even call that a movie? That's bullcrap, dude. Let's go get our money back.
Even the cast and crew gave up at a certain point. I mean, just look at the climax in Las Vegas. Doodles are flying everywhere. The people of Las Vegas are turning into doodles. Even the bricks of the Union Plaza Hotel turned to doodles. They look like the colonials from All Tomorrows. Nobody ever talks about how this toon-pocalypse just hit a major populated city. They all look like they've just been hit by some crazy weather. After all this doodle shit goes away, the actors just move on. It's pretty clear to tell by the ending, nobody cares. Not the writers, not the actors, and especially not Bachke. He just wanted this movie done. And the reason why is probably what further sent Cool World into infamy. You know, beyond the quality of the movie itself. So if there's one thing about this movie that has remained within the zeitgeist of movie nerds, it's how the script we got was vastly different from Bachke's original idea. It's all anyone talks about whenever they bring up this movie. But there's way more that happened behind the scenes than just the script change. Trust me, this rabbit hole is deep. A lot of my research came from looking at the Cool World Wiki, a recent interview from Bachke by the Zoomart Studio, an old behind-the-scenes TV show called Rock and Talk promoting Cool World, this Lost Media Wiki article detailing the Cool World original script, and way more. If you're interested in learning about this movie in further detail, I'll include the links in the description so you can check them out if you want more details. Okay. So the main story goes, Bachke was getting exhausted in the underground scene and wanted to make millions of dollars in Hollywood, like his New York contemporaries Scorsese and Coppola were doing, and hoped working with a studio will make the process of filmmaking easier. Oh, you poor man. So he managed to get a hold of Frank Mancuso Jr., a producer who recently cut ties with famous animator Don Bluth, and the two got a meeting with Paramount. Bachke pitched his idea as an R-rated slasher horror flick, where a cartoonist working on this underground comic in prison became obsessed with the female protagonist of his story. Somehow, he would go to her world and have a little with his cartoon creation, which gave birth to a human-toon hybrid, with a detective piecing the whole thing together. The kid didn't fit in anywhere and resented their father for abandoning them, so they made it their life's mission to get to the human world, find their deadbeat dad, and kill him in cold blood. The film would star Drew Barrymore as the cartoon woman, Debbie Dallas, Brad Pitt as the detective, fresh off of Velma and Louise, and apparently Bachke wanted Sean Penn to play the cartoonist. Jesus, can you imagine Sean Penn in this dumpster fire? Paramount apparently loved the pitch, bought the idea in 10 seconds, in Bachke's own words, and the screenwriting process started immediately. Bachke wrote his own script, while Mancuso Jr. hired screenwriters Michael Grace, Mark Victor, and Larry Gross to make several other drafts based on Bachke's original concept. And this is where things get complicated. So a rumor spreading around is that Bachke found out Mancuso Jr. rewrote the movie behind his back. Bachke got so angry with him that they got into a fist fight where Bachke gave him a jab in the mouth, and Paramount threatened to sue Bachke over this unless he finished the movie. Especially troublesome considering that the head of Paramount at the time was Mancuso Jr.'s daddy. Sounds pretty bad, right? Except Bachke disproved the story. Kind of. In a 2022 interview with The Independent. "I never punched Frank Mancuso Jr. That was just a rumor. I yelled at him a couple of times, but that wasn't his fault. I liked Frank. I never punched him. Can we set that straight?" So this doesn't disprove that the film was changed, or that arguments did happen, or that even Paramount threatened to sue, but it just kind of disproves, maybe, if you take Bachke's side, that there was no physical altercation in response to any of this. I don't know if Paramount was exaggerating or if Bachke was trying to save face. Either way, it's not a good look. So many of you must be thinking, how could Mancuso Jr. and Paramount do this to Bachke? How could they stab him in the back and twist his vision into something unrecognizable? How can you justify such a betrayal of trust like that? Betrayal!
What?
Betrayal! Betrayed me! I've got 3 reasons as to why. They're very flimsy, but they're the only ones I could come up with. 1, the rating. Paramount probably took in the time to absorb Bachke's experimental horror project after the pitch, and figured it wouldn't grab the audience they needed beyond Bachke's diehards, or earn back the budget that they needed.
I don't hire directors with burning desires to tell their stories. I need someone with experience who can shoot a film in 4 days and make me a profit. Sorry, that's all that matters.
So they changed the rating of Cool World from R to PG-13 as a vain attempt to get more tickets sold and more butts in the seats, even families who foolishly think that this is going to be a kids movie, which it is not. Look up the damn movie before you take your kids to it. God damn it.
The film is rated PG-13, but I saw it with an audience of a lot of kids, actually, and I think that they thought it was animated, and for them, it's not for them.
2, being pigeonholed. Before Cool World, Mancuso Jr. had mostly worked on horror projects, such as the Friday the 13th franchise. You would think this would make him a match made in heaven to give Bachke's cool slasher flick the support it needed, but at this point, Mancuso Jr. was going through the creative version of a midlife crisis. He wanted to work on something that was going to revolutionize the film industry, kind of like James Cameron with Avatar, and was working together with Don Bluth to make that happen. I imagine he saw Roger Rabbit and inspired him to get on board with this hybrid animation style and help start a new wave of filmmaking. For some reason, the arrangement with Don Bluth didn't work out. Bakshi took advantage of that vacancy and pitched Mancuso Jr. the idea of Cool World. Mancuso Jr. mostly agreed out of sheer spite for Bluth. He then had all the screenwriters come in to make it less horror-focused, probably to diversify his portfolio a little bit. So that's why the film went from being this horror flick to this steamy contemporary film noir thriller type thing. Because at the end of the day, Mancuso Jr. wanted a Bluth movie, not a Bakshi movie. And 3, the script. Paramount and Mancuso Jr. might have just realized about the original script what most audiences would realize about the final product, that it was very underwritten. Even the storyboards drawn for the original had no real explanation for what Cool World was, or how it even works. Not that I'm expecting it to because it's a storyboard, but that's just the facts. So they probably hired the additional writers to work on the extra drafts to punch up the original idea and kind of flesh out the world in its own weird way. Mancuso Jr. wanted something on par with Terminator 2 in terms of doing something groundbreaking and revolutionary that no filmgoer has ever seen before, and they probably pitched this idea to Paramount thinking that they can make it happen.
It's like if you were to say to somebody, well, what are people going to feel when they walk out of T2? You'd say, wow, man, you just never seen this before. I mean, what we're going to do is, well, hopefully, I mean, not that this is T2, but it will be as different an experience as T2 was when you sort of walked into it.
They failed in every department, but those are just my theories. Okay, but that's all the drama is involved, right? No. Not by a long shot. Just like a college theater club, there's more drama behind the curtain than on the stage. If you asked Bakshi at the time, he'd probably blame the whole system for screwing him over. Bakshi probably penned this line near the end, specifically as his own little to the film industry.
Who pushed him?
Hollywood!
Hollywood! That bitch!
I imagine he changed the name from Debbie Dowles to Hollywood just for this petty jab. Subtle. Look, it does suck that Bakshi's original script was altered, but if there was one, it's not available online. The only thing available are storyboards Bakshi developed for the pitch with artist Louise Zingarelli, which shows Debbie Dallas, the Hollywood character, looking more like Drew Barrymore at the time, giving more validity to the claims of the original casting. The whole storyboard seems to be something of a precursor to when Harris snuck into Holly's party in the movie. The closest we get is on this website that summarizes the whole damn thing. Writer for the film, Michael Grace, says that Bakshi barely contributed to the writing of the script at all, and there was a lot of tension between the writers and Bakshi in particular, especially with the ending. Remember that loony ending that spends about 10 minutes doing absolute nonsense? Yeah, according to Grace, the ending was going to be even worse. It had this long chase scene across the Golden Gate Bridge, so I guess it was going to be set in San Francisco, between Holly and Jack, that was going to be 30 pages long. For context, the average length of time in a screenplay is about 1 minute per page. 1 minute! So that's 30 minutes of this chaos-fueled, tedious nonsense of a climax. Grace and the rest of the writers were left confounded and exhausted. We couldn't figure out how this fucking thing ended, in his own words. And that's just what I imagine he sounds like. I want you to let this sink in. What we got was the abridged version. Help. Now it makes sense why there was so much bullshit about Jack redeeming himself and Frank being a hero. They were probably bigger parts of the movie, but eventually got scrapped along with the 30-minute chase scene. Probably for the best. And amidst all the chaos, the two main leads were also changed against Bakshi's wishes. Jack Deves was now played by Gabriel Byrne, and Drew Barrymore was cast out to make way for Kim Basinger, because the studio thought they'd be bigger box office draws. Remember, this all happened when those two actors were still relevant. And apparently Bakshi hated the casting of Gabriel Byrne because he wanted someone younger and grittier to play Jack Deves, much like himself, I imagine. And he wanted somebody younger to play the cartoon girl, so she could be this Girls Gone Wild, Coyote Ugly style party girl. Which does make Hollywood's more juvenile behavior make a lot more sense in context. But the studio wanted the actors, so Bakshi's hands were tied. And on top of that, Kim Basinger also wanted to rewrite the script. I'm not even kidding. Once she got on the project, I guess she wanted to be more kid-friendly, so she pitched the idea to Bakshi, and as Bakshi retells the story, She thought it would be great if she could be able to show this picture to hospitals with sick kids or something. Batchke said no to the proposition, obviously, but I guess that would explain why Hollywood feels more like a Saturday morning cartoon villain by the end, but that's just my interpretation. Batchke eventually got sick of all the live action drama, so when he went to his preferred medium, animation, he totally f***ed everyone over. He never gave the animation team a finished screenplay to go off of. Instead, Batchke just told them to do a scene that's funny, whatever you want to do. Which also explains why the animation feels like it clashes with the live action segments and goes on for way too long and often feels unfinished. That's because the animators had no clue what the f*** was going on. Oh, and that's not all. According to Grace, Batchke had apparently shot footage that was completely unusable. We don't know what that means or what the footage was, but in the process, Batchke had apparently offended so many people that he was never allowed back in Hollywood again. And this is how we got the movie we got.
I've had it with you, Harris. I've had it with you, goddammit! You've had it with me? You've had it with me, you piece of shit!
This whole production just feels like a f***ing mess, with no strong figureheads to be able to keep this project from going off the rails. The guy who was originally steering the ship had the helm stolen from him by multiple people, and the new guy mainly in charge had no clue how the f*** to make this new weird idea work. Egos clashed to the point of interfering with multiple levels of production, which ultimately sabotaged the final product. But who's to blame for this? Mancuso Jr., Paramount, Batchke? I don't know. Mancuso Jr. seems like a two-faced and pretentious newbie that was creating more problems than he knew how to solve. Batchke seems like an angry, overly ambitious curmudgeon that will fight and retaliate at the slightest provocation. Paramount seemed as two-faced as Mancuso Jr. was, and just seemed like they were trying to make a profit by riding a new trend. And writers like Grace seemed like they were just pulling their hair out at dealing with the Herculean task of making this entire project work. So it's less a matter of who's to blame for all this, but who's telling the truth in what went wrong. Because there's multiple accounts, and on that matter, I can't really say. It's a real Rashomon situation we got going on here. Either way, these three elements mixing together were a recipe for disaster. Everyone involved either screwed each other over for profit or pettiness, tried to put their own mark on this Theseus ship of Batchke's original vision, and the rest of the people involved were just trying to get this shit show done. Now keep in mind, all this nonsense is from the hindsight perspective of movie nerds like me, and not the average moviegoer. So, if I can be allowed to play devil's advocate for a second, I can kind of see why Paramount and Mancuso Jr., maybe less Mancuso Jr., did what they did. At the end of the day, filmmaking is a complex web of multiple interworking parts, and business is one of them. Even as a cool, niche, medium blending horror film, I don't see how Batchke's original vision would have worked for a feature-length Hollywood production. It might have worked as an independent short, but I doubt there was enough material to sustain this concept for an hour and a half. I've seen a lot of Batchke's earlier films, and a lot of them just kind of meander along without any sense of direction or long-term goal. It would have been a hard sell to anyone who wasn't into experimental filmmaking, horror movies, or just one of Batchke's diehards. Paramount and Mancuso Jr. must have figured this out, and as shitty as what they did to Batchke was, I do get why they changed the script so much. They wanted their own Roger Rabbit to compete with Disney, and if they want to keep getting made, films do need to make a profit at the end of the day. And they did what they thought would be the best way to do that. So on a practical level, I get it. But even if I accepted they edited the script to be more appealing beyond Batchke's fan base, even after they get 3 writers to come in and redraft the script and add more meat to the story, even if I ignore the shit ton of disastrous production issues and give everyone involved the benefit of the doubt, from the writers to Batchke to Paramount to Mancuso, this is the best that they came up with? So this part is just me talking about the rest of the stuff I found weird in this movie that I couldn't quite fit into like the plot analysis or production, so I'm just going to go through them individually. I'm going to start with the actors, who definitely make evident how difficult this production must have been for them, given their performances in the final product. The acting often feels stilted, confused, or delayed. The interposing of animation with the actors' movements is often very wonky and stiff, and at worst points they can be very distracting.
Tough night.
The usual.
It's clear as day these actors are struggling with the material, most of all is Brad Pitt. Gabriel Byrne was at least a more seasoned actor at this point, and even if he's acting off of nothing, is still kind of convincing as this meek and delirious tortured soul who's just really horny for his cartoon creation.
Problem is, I just got back in town, as I said, and I haven't really got my feet, on the ground. But it's really nice of you to ask.
But Brad Pitt was still relatively green at this point. He'd only had a couple of major roles under his belt, and doing something this experimental was not something he was used to, which makes it more apparent to us, the audience, that he's on a set by himself and has nothing to act off of in almost every scene. And that is not good for suspension of disbelief. In Roger Rabbit, the crew made a to-scale model of Roger that would be moved and posed in every shot, not just for the animators to use as a placeholder, but also for the actors in the scene to know what Roger looked like, where he would be, and what he'd be doing in every scene, giving them something to act off of. Cool World did not do this. Every time Pitt and Byrne didn't know how to play a scene when they were acting off of the doodles, Mancuso Jr. told them to just imagine what was in front of them and just wing it.
Some people just got very frustrated and says, I can't see what I'm supposed to be seeing. And you take one of those kind of walks around the studio and you say, look, you're never going to be able to see this. So we can look at this two ways. This is either can be an obstacle or an opportunity. And if you look at this as an opportunity to sort of paint the character any way you want them to be and have them be wherever, I said, we will be animating to you, the human being. We're not going to do it the other way around. So you don't feel restricted by that.
Which explains this.
I drew you. I made you. Maybe I can erase you.
Most seasoned actors would struggle working under these conditions, and this is one of Brad Pitt's first roles. That is mind-blowing. It's a miracle he came out of this flick halfway decent.
Maybe you and me, I can't have that in the real world. I can't live without you. But I can't be with you, it's, What do you do, huh?
Okay, mostly decent. The closest comparison I can think of is Ian McKellen in the Hobbit movies. How the production got so messy and tiresome that it broke the man. Just sitting alone on a green screen set full of empty chairs, muttering that this is not why he became an actor. This is just sad, man. Get these guys a tennis ball and a stick to act off, something!
It was so distressing and off-putting and difficult that I thought, I don't want to make this film if this is what I'm going to have to do. It's not what I do for a living. I act with other people. I don't act on my own.
I bet Byrne and Pitt were relieved to get any scene where they could act off of each other. As melodramatic and exposition heavy as those scenes were, and probably having to improvise some lines, at least they get to act off of real people instead of pretending that not Jessica Rabbit and not Roger Rabbit were in front of them. Speaking of which, let's talk about the big can of worms that is Cool World itself. After I go get a cup of tea, I'll be right back. So there's not a lot of explanation on what Cool World is. The closest I can estimate from the dialogue is as this twisted, primordial otherworld of chaos, sin, and debauchery. And it's a place that can only be visited by those who are out of touch with reality, or just really creative artsy types. Kind of like how in the Call of Cthulhu story, artists like Henry Anthony Wilcox keep having dreams of the sunken city where Cthulhu resides, and hearing voices from the Elder God, slowly driving them mad. Same thing happens with Jack Deebs, who sees visions of Cool World and thinks it's all like a dream, and when he gets pulled into it, his mind gets messed with by Hollywood. I mean, we see how much of an effect this has on him when he's going through the desert and just trying to block out Holly's visions. Maybe it's an eldritch horror corruption thing, where Holly drove him crazy with the constant dreams about Cool World, and then he went into a rage, killing the guy who slept with his wife. And with Jack in prison and his life completely ruined, he became more susceptible to Holly's influence. I can assume the doodles themselves are primordial eldritch beings that take the form of cartoons drawn by artists like Jack Deebs. So maybe they start out as the floating sketches we see periodically, and then become whole entities like Slash & Co.
I'm a cartoonist. I drew all this. I have visions. I translate this.
You do nothing, man. This place exists with or without you. You believe me, right? I'm not one of your creations. The truth is, she's been after me and every other noise who's come through here. It's just that no one's been insane enough to get involved with her.
I say estimate for all this because the movie doesn't explain anything. Everything that I just said, all that shit that I told you about the Lovecraft and shit, that's just glorified fan fiction on my part. I mean, in the movie, we hear about other locations like Sweet Place, which I thought was like a club or something, but they give me no context for what Sweet Place is or why I should even care.
The goons can't touch him in Sweet Place, and we just run ourselves ragged giving him the shadow.
You would never know unless you read the tie-in comics. And yes, there are tie-in comics. We're going to get to them later. None of these concepts are ever explored within the movie itself. They just keep adding plot hole riddled lore and wild animation as a substitute for world building. If anything goes in a fantasy world, it means you don't have to elaborate on anything. Except one thing, which they elaborate on constantly. The only rule that Cool World has, which brings up the biggest plot hole in the movie.
Noids do not have sex with doodles. Right? Noids do not have sex with doodles.
Why must you hurt me in this way, Harry?
So in Cool World, doodles are obsessed with sex. Literally, that's all they focus on and all they talk about. They all act like horny men or pent-up teenagers who talk about doing dirty shit, who oogle and ogle any hot person that they see, and mess around with each other like wild animals. The doodles are like Karlach in Baldur's Gate 3. They'd be rearing to go if it wasn't for the physical limitations. And I would say that sex is something that only doodles are obsessed with, but no, the humans in the movie are too. That alt-girl comic store clerk who was fangirling over Jack, yeah, she's horny for him too.
When this place closes down, I go down to this place right off the strip for coffee. They read poetry, do jazz, you know.
So, I get the feeling that Batchke's just a horny guy. So, from one horny person to another, Batchke, I see you, man. I see you. But you gotta calm this shit down. You gotta take it from like an 11 to like a 7, man. You're giving us perverts a bad name. More than we already did. And despite the movie saying how much Noids having sex with doodles is a big deal, the movie never explains why. Like, sure, there are characters like Frank Harris and Nails the Spider, who chastise and cockblock themselves, Jack Deeves and Holly from going all the way with Noids like a Catholic priest in a brothel. But they never elaborate on what the consequences for the Doodle-Noid relations are, so the audience is left wondering what the issue is. At least I was wondering that. What's the fucking big deal? When I first watched the movie, I thought it was like, okay, maybe humans are too fragile and can't handle the wacky feral antics that noodles do. Except we see Gabriel Byrne fall from what would basically be skydiver heights and just tumble to the ground without a scrape. So humans must have the same resilience as doodles while in Cool World. So what's the big deal, Brad Pitt? Just let the girl have her fun. As long as it's all consenting, of course.
Listen to me, that cop, Harris, he said we can't go any further than this, Holly.
So hot for you, Jack.
Yeah.
Are you gonna follow the rules?
No.
Or are you gonna follow your instincts?
Yeah.
I ain't even going near that.
So by the time Holly turns human in the movie, I was just confused, like, that's it? That's all that happens when a doodle does the with a Noid? They just become human? I mean, it's not just that. We see at the end of the movie that humans become doodles and vice versa, and how it spreads like a weird cartoon STD to on whatever they touch. But none of these consequences were established ahead of time, so the audience has no clue what to make of this until they see all the chaotic shit happen until the very end. Frank probably could have explained this to Jack earlier. He would know the most since he knew Dr. Whiskers, who would have told him everything about Cool World. You know, the doctor, played by Father from Kids Next Door, who brought Frank into Cool World and taught him all about it, and would be the most knowledgeable since he's been studying Doodle and Noid dimensional merge bullshit all his life? Wouldn't he have given Brad Pitt the explanation of what happens if Doodles and Noids get together and what it means for both worlds? Nope. No, he does not. He's just been hanging around Las Vegas this whole time wearing nothing but a fedora, scarf, and trench coat just to cover his toon appearance. Where the hell has he been? He's just been gone for like most of the movie and then just comes back in the last 20 minutes. I guess he spent the last 50 years in the human world, like studying it and hiding the spike of power? But what the hell else has he been doing? Was he living on the streets? Was he gambling for 50 straight years? Like Biff Tannen with the Almanac? He does kind of just show up near the end just to be an exposition machine. He doesn't really contribute much to the plot beyond the opening. His character is just kind of a waste. Seems like Holly thinks the same thing. He even tries to kill him for being a wimp.
Cease! Desist! Stop me now!
In fact, she calls a lot of people that she doesn't like wimps or pencil dicks. Tries to make it her own little catchphrase.
I'm leaving, Pencil Dick. You just try and stop me.
I know the film's trying to present her as this like film noir femme fatale, but she just kind of acts like a bratty teenager being sent to a room. Now, does any guy get offended if they're called a wimp or a pencil dick? Not Frank Harris. He's too Sigma for her petty bullshit.
You want to know what it is about you that really kicks my ass, Harris?
How about my foot?
Well, you prance around here waving that gun around like you're some big deal. And all this time you could cross over to the real world. But you haven't got the guts. You don't have what it takes to be real. That makes you a wimp in my book.
You may be right, Slick. Be content with the cards you've been dealt.
God, it's stupid. Speaking of Harris, the guy doesn't really act like a detective. He postulates like one, has a sort of hard-boiled Humphrey Bogart thing going on, but we never see him like find any clues or interrogate people. All we see him do is slap around Sparks the gangster and warn Holly and Jack not to have sex. Then when they have sex, his partner dies in the process. What a master sleuth this man is.
It's your job, isn't it? Detect!
They could have had him start piecing together that Hollywood is messing with Jack's thoughts in the real world to try and bring him back in the cool world, which also seems like it's against Jack's will. So maybe he can figure out how this is happening and he has to try to stop her before she can do it like they do.
On the Discovery Channel. Do it again now.
Maybe establish that this intermingling will result in the chaos being spread in cool world and the real world. Like maybe both sides will start seeping into each other when it's honestly safer just to keep them separated. But no, he never says anything like that. He's mostly just sad because his mom died and keeps cucking himself from his girlfriend, clearly best girl, Lynette, the bar girl. She's got more class than Hollywood. She's not like those other girls.
Why do guys only want bitchy bimbos who walk all over them?
Even if she's just as horny for sex as Holly is, and that's almost all she and Frank talk about in their times alone.
Hey, Frank.
Hey, what?
Did you ever do it in the real world? Do you ever think about going back there so you can?
So yes, she is exactly like the other girls.
So did you do it while you were back there in the real world? Did you do it while you were real? Do you ever think about going back there so you can?
There's no reason now.
Now this brings up the biggest question I've had whenever I watch this movie. What is sex like for Doodles? Every Doodle seems to be fueled by some kind of lust. As stated before, we see Doodles fool around with each other in the background. Holly talks about how much she wants to feel something real while rubbing herself on everything like a dog in heat.
Don't you see? They're real. They touch something, they feel it. And when they taste something, they really taste it. And when they do it with a man, they really do it.
So maybe Doodles can't feel anything during sex since they're all like made of ink and they physically can't do it because they're like Barbie dolls downstairs. It would explain Holly's urgency to turn human and do what humans do best, eat, sleep, and fuck. Except Frank mentioned earlier that there were Doodle families.
Biggest Vinny is a fairy tale, Wood. Doodle moms tell it to Doodle kids to help them go to sleep.
And we see side characters in Cool World that have clearly reproduced, like this bunny mom with a spidey sense for sex, which every Doodle seems to have for some reason. And she clearly has bunny kids because we see them sitting at her dinner table. And in the tie-in comics, yes, we will get to the tie-in comics. Trust me. We see this 1950s dad Doodle who has a wife and kids, like some nuclear family dynamic. So either Doodles can reproduce via intercourse like humans can, so that would mean that they can have sex, or the Doodle families are just drawn together or made like a package deal together or whatever, and they just stay that way for eternity. It seems to be the case because Holly's apparently been a Doodle since Jack drew her. Except we also see Spark the gangster talk to these little urchin Doodles in the beginning and say,
"You're too young to be thinking about girls, especially that girl."
So either he's being a sadistic shit, or Doodles can grow up the same way humans do. So do Doodles follow the same sexual reproduction rules as humans or not? Because I can't tell. Okay, maybe the problem is that they just can't feel anything during sex. I mean, after all, they are just ink, so maybe just like vampires, the Doodles are just replicating the emotions and the movements of sexual intercourse, rather than actually being able to feel it. Except we saw Holly herself constantly squirming around and touching herself in the beginning, and in her big orgasmic scene with Jack, her reactions looked pretty real to me. So what the fuck is Holly on about feeling something real? Like, was she just faking the orgasms the entire time, or... Wait a minute. What if she was just bad at sex? Maybe she was lying about really feeling something real because all this time she didn't know what the f she was doing, and every time she had doodle sex, she was doing it wrong. I mean, she's acting like a teenager throughout the movie, and that's definitely something that people first having sex do because they have no standard of what feels good. So she overcompensated by solely committing to Noi Dong. If this is true, I find it hilarious that the antagonist of this Hollywood film, literally named Hollywood, plunged the whole world into chaos because she never got the birds and the bees talk. God, that's funny. It's crazy how cartoon sex is a pivotal point for this multi-million-dollar movie. Thank you, Batchkey and Paramount. Robert Crumb would be proud.
I had this sexual attraction to cute cartoon characters. You tell me, I don't know.
POW Comics would be elated. And you know, maybe I'm overthinking all this. Maybe I'm being pedantic, and I shouldn't keep focusing so hard on sex, and... you know, you might be right there. After all, I don't want to get demonetized to just keep talking about sex so much. So maybe I should pivot to other points of the movie. Except that I can't. Because the movie keeps focusing so hard on sex! It's the only aspect of dialogue talked about extensively. Holly's entire motivation in the first half of the movie is to have sex. I've never seen a movie focus so hard on sex and just barely deliver on what they promise. Every character is like a horny teenager that talk about something they have no idea about. So don't call me a horn dog, you imaginary strawman I made up for this scenario. Because I'm not thinking so hard about sex. Because sex is the huge crux of this movie. And just like any other PG-13 movie, they can't fully deliver on what they promised. So from horn dogs to writing nerds to movie nerds, it's a huge letdown for everyone.
Was it good for you?
It wasn't what I expected.
Look, Batch even 30 years ago. I'm trying to meet you halfway here. You don't have to be like Tolkien and have like multiple books to explain how Middle Earth works. But if you're gonna build a world, you have to explain how the world works. I know you know how to world build, man. You did it in Wizards. Like, your other movies, they were in New York. We know New York. That's fine. We don't know Cool World. Tell us about Cool World. What is going on in your head, Batchkey? We can't figure out what's going on there, man. We can't read your mind. Tell me! Ah! Sweating here. Okay, now that I've got all that bashing and nitpicking and screaming out of my system, we can finally talk about the stuff I like about this movie. Because yes, despite everything I said, I still kind of like this movie. Tentatively. Hopefully I can explain why. Even though this movie was a box office bomb and every critic rightfully panned it, it still gained a cult following over time as a flawed piece of art by a flawed man, as a lot of Bashi's movies are. And there's a few reasons why I think that is. For one, the atmosphere. The animation, when it's not all over the place, is very unique and does a lot to build up Cool World as an environment. The atmosphere is dynamic, bizarre, gritty, and unsettling.
There is no one section, it's just the vibe of the thing.
The backgrounds especially add to this and look, for lack of a better word, cool. With dark skies and eternal twilight, and bent, twisted skyscrapers with mouths on them, silhouetted by the orange flames of the street level that glow like hellfire, and winding roads that twist all over the place, even into the mouths. Why does the architecture in this movie have mouths? I don't know. It looks cool. It's like some bizarre mixture of hell and 70s New York, like if Has Been Hotel was made by Anton first. Hell, I even like the sets. Sure, the actors are still miming their way through each scene and it doesn't look like an actual lived-in location. It's all cutouts, but it looks sick. And apparently that's enough for me. You could probably take the clips from this movie and mash them together with some Marilyn Manson or Rob Zombie or something, and it would be the best AMV ever. 2. The soundtrack. I think the music in this movie does a lot of the heavy lifting. It's mostly just a lot of licensed tracks with 90s techno and industrial rock, but it really does complement the frantic and gritty nature that this movie wants to establish. 3 tracks in particular, Do That Thing, Sex on Wheels, and Play With Me, come to mind whenever I think of this movie. Also, David Bowie has a track in here. That's pretty cool. It's Real Cool World, and I think he did it for the movie. It's only played at the end credits, but it's there. Oh boy, I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel, aren't I? 3. The themes. Despite it being such a messy movie, I think there's some solid themes that are threaded throughout it that keep it from falling apart in my eyes. And by some, I really only mean there's like one good theme. The struggle for freedom and the lengths that characters will go to achieve said freedom and escape their reality. But I think it's a good one. Our three leads signify this theme the most, so let's focus this topic on them. Holly is definitely the most obvious case study, as she feels trapped in a form that is too limiting for her and yearns to escape her meaningless longevity by turning to humanity. Like this great Gatsby green light she keeps reaching for without actually getting any closer. She only sees the glitz and glamour of people like Marilyn Monroe and places like Las Vegas as her only examples of the real world, and is almost in this like naive daydream of how harsh the real world can be. So when she finds out that the real world isn't as grand and accommodating as she was expecting it to be, or things don't go her way, she grows paranoid and kills anyone in her way to achieve a goal that will ultimately not give her what she wants. Then there's Jack Deaves, a man who wasn't exactly brought into Cool World willingly, but over time succumbs to the world's and Hollywood's seductive influence to escape the reality of his own traumatic and miserable life. Even in the beginning, he states how he wouldn't have gone through prison without Holly.
You're just a drawing, Holly, but without you, I'd never have made it.
He eventually realizes what he's doing is wrong, but it's almost too late for him to change that as his resistance against Hollywood and Cool World diminishes over time. His giving into his indulgences starts the chain reactions that puts the lives of others and the two worlds themselves into jeopardy.
You just couldn't take a piece of good advice, could you? No, Jack, you had to listen to your Johnson. I've had it with you, Harris. I've had it with you, goddammit! You've had it with me? You've had it with me, you piece of shit! You screw us over, piece of ass, and you've had it with me. Where is she?
Then there's the most overt example, Frank Harris. Being a World War II veteran who watched his mother die before he transported into Cool World, he is definitely the most lonely character of the trio. I mean, we never see him talk to any other soldier when he gets off the plane in the beginning. He's solely focused on his mom, so we can assume he has no family or friends to go back to, hence why he stays in Cool World for as long as he has. He doesn't want to return to a life of pain and death. Frank's the inverse to Holly in this sense, as he actively refuses to go back to Vegas where he'll be forced to confront his inner demons and the most traumatic moments of his life.
Let me tell you something about over there. It hurts over there. It's lonely over there. God, it's a war over there. They got 8 million ways for you to die, hon, and all of them are permanent. This is real for me. This, with you.
Hell, you could put his sexual repression in this category too. He constantly denies himself his own happiness with Lynette, a woman he can't live without in his own words. And it's not just because of the no sex rule. He's a traumatized man who feels like he's responsible for the death of his mother, and maybe responsible for his fellow soldiers dying in the war, since he basically comes off the plane alone, without anyone to talk to. So by rejecting the real world, he is unironically chained to the past and can't move on with his life. When Frank eventually does go back to the real world to stop Holly, he goes back by remembering everything he's been repressing for years. I find that a very interesting contrast, as Holly and Jack's key to the real world is their wanderlust and joy, and mostly their lust, whereas Frank's lies with his anguish, showing he could have gone home whenever he wanted, but if that meant reliving the worst day of his life, why would he? The only way for him to move forward is to finally accept the pain he's been scared to confront, for the sake of something bigger than himself. I do think this is one of the more compelling scenes in the movie, and Brad Pitt portrays the agony of a tormented soul finally confronting his trauma very well. Hell, that stupid ending where Frank comes back as a doodle can be reframed to add to this theme, as he's rewarded for confronting his past by being given a way to finally move on with his life and embrace the happiness he feels like he's ready to seize. A lot of Bashki's films have themes similar to this, albeit way more violent and debaucherous since it's R-rated, sometimes X-rated. It's funny how he wanted to be like Scorsese and Ford Coppola, since as messy as they are, his films very much remind me of them, Scorsese in particular. His protagonists are often misunderstood or tortured souls trying to find their way through a world that is cruel and unforgiving, and it leads them to going down a road that is often just as bloody, leading to the demise of others or themselves. It takes a lot of elements from his life in New York, of the people and troubles he witnessed every day, and as cartoonish and over the top as they are, a lot of his films are unafraid to show the grit and suffering that goes overlooked in a loud and frantic world. Sometimes they can be very overt, like a female personification of America abusing a black man with the national anthem playing, or two homeless guys playing music just for one of them to die with no one noticing, not even his music partner. These moments are my favorites, small interactions from people on the street, usually recorded from people who aren't actors, to give an exaggerated but nonetheless confronting look at those struggling in a world that is ignorant to them. And these people either wallow in ignorance until the very end, or they realize the futility of their situation and how little power they have to change their lives.
I just ain't there. Everybody plays like they're there, but they ain't there. I ain't there. Your pigeon ain't there. He flies high like he there, but he don't fly unless you open that cage. And he got to come back cause he's trained to. We ain't there.
It's why, despite the film's many flaws and the problems I have with its script, Bakshi's knack for emotional storytelling still shines through. Even the idea of the original concept, with the killer being a Noi-Doodle hybrid, that could have worked well if it was allowed to be developed. It must have meant a lot to Bakshi, with his own background as a mixed heritage kid in the boroughs. It's why, despite this nonsense, just like a lot of Bakshi's work, this movie still has its moments that made me feel like it wasn't a total lost cause, and show what could have been with just a few extra tweaks. So when I first started writing the script, it was originally going to be like a hypothetical rewrite or revision of the movie. Not just the original idea Bakshi had for a horror flick, but how these ideas could have all worked together with just a few alterations to the script. But I felt like talking about the rest of the movie and adding context would have made this segment flow a bit better, or at least given a lot more context than me just going in blind, so it just turned into a review. So let's try and revise this script and see if we can make something of a treatment, or at least like a plot synopsis of this hypothetical fan fiction, one that takes the ideas of both the final product and Bakshi's original vision, and see if we can batch them together. Okay, so the movie's going to focus on Frank Harris, still, a World War II vet who just came home from the war only to lose his mother in a terrible bike accident. Meanwhile, Dr. Whiskers, a cartoon scientist from another world, is experimenting with this trans-dimensional device and talks about seeing her again. Ooh, who could she be? I wonder. Suddenly, the device flares up to Frank's burst of emotion from losing his mother, imagine, and he's transported to the place the doctor calls home, Cool World. He explains it's a dream-like dimension of cartoon-like beings of chaos called doodles that mirror the human world. The doctor helps this grief-stricken man get accustomed to Cool World since he has no idea how to bring him back, and teaches him as much as he knows about the Cool World itself, especially the disastrous imbalance that comes from human and doodle relations, which he knows from personal experience. We cut to years later where Frank Harris is now a hard-boiled detective with the fear of returning to the human world. He has taken it upon himself to become the law of Cool World, making sure that humans that interact with doodles are safeguarded and don't intermingle with their loins. One doodle in particular, Hollywood, is his biggest problem. You see, Hollywood is a doodle-noid hybrid who has felt out of place all her life, and wants to escape to Las Vegas to find her mother and father and confront them for why she's been alone all these years. The easiest way for her to do that is by having sex with a human, which she thinks will let her human side take control long enough to teleport her to her dream place, Las Vegas, as only humans can teleport in and out of Cool World. So since Harris is out, she decides to play the long game with another. In the real world, a criminal named Jack Deebs gains notoriety by making a comic based on Cool World while in prison. When he's released, he tries to live a quiet life, but that changes when he comes into contact with this cult of artists and creative types from LA, who have also seen Cool World in visions and revere it as this primordial plane that can fulfill their greatest desires. Jack Deebs is hesitant at first, but his mind keeps getting tormented by visions of Cool World until eventually he loses himself to Cool World's madness and succumbs to Holly's charms. Meanwhile, you have Frank Harris trying to piece together what Holly is doing and figuring out how to stop her and Deebs before it's too late. You know, make him feel like a detective. Even if he figures it out too late, at least he's trying, or at least the audience sees he's trying. You can also keep the dynamic between him and Lynette and him and Nails. That's kind of handled okay. Maybe give them more to talk about than just sex. Anyway, Hollywood finally has sex with Jack and becomes Kim Basinger, sucking nails into a fountain pen, and finally going to the human world. Frank Harris, determined to stop Hollywood before she causes more disarray, confronts his fear of going back to the human world and the grief of the people he lost to do what needs to be done and bring Hollywood back and be a hero and yada 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 yada. So when they finally return to Vegas, the cult make their way to Jack Deebs' house and revere Hollywood as some kind of demigod They tell her that her mother was the original founder of the cult, as she gathered like-minded people through her writings and drawings of Doodle and Cool World. Tragically, she got sent to an insane asylum and died within custody. Just as Holly is coming to terms with this revelation, Jack Deeves and her starts shifting back and forth between Doodle and Noid forms, and is passing the shifting through to everyone around them. This makes the cult elated as they exclaim that he has ascended to becoming a Doodle, and effectively immortal. But the only way to gain true power and immortality is by finding the spike of power. Not listening to this much, Holly runs outside as she succumbs to grief for not having any world where she will belong to, and that is when she runs into Dr. Whiskers, who has been in the human world this whole time, and Holly inadvertently discovers that he's her father. She goes after him in a rage and demands to tell her everything. He explains that he was created by her mother and they fell in love with each other, even if they were worlds apart. For anyone who's seen Death Note, it's kind of like that one Shinigami that fell in love with Misa. Somehow he found a way to jump out of the page and into the real world to romance her, and eventually Holly was born. But as he held his daughter for the first time, he and his daughter began to shift the same way that Jack Deeves did, and the fluctuation created a surge that transported her and the Doctor back to Cool World. The Doctor started working on a way to get his daughter and himself back, spending all of his time developing the spike of power. Once he returned, abandoning Holly to Cool World, he found his love had died long ago. Once he realized the spike was too powerful, he couldn't just let anyone have it, or else they would succumb to a lust for power. So after grieving her loss, he dedicated his time trapped in the human world trying to stop the shenanigans of the Cool World worshipping cult. Holly threatens him unless he reveals where the spike is, and he reveals that it's on the Union Plaza hotel roof. Because she can't kill him, she uses Jack's fountain pen and sucks him up, saying she'll deal with him later. Her goals then shifted out of chaos, where she believes that the world should live the way that she has, two worlds at war with each other, and the best way to do that is to go to the Union Plaza Hotel and claim the spike of power, basically what the movie did, just with a bit more motivation behind it. The cult are on board with this and drive her there with promises of immortality and debauchery with doodles, because most artists in LA are kind of freaks. After they leave, Frank finally arrives in Jack's house, coincidentally the same spot where his mother died, and Frank demands to tell Jack, still in shock and agony from all the shapeshifting, what is going on. Once he's filled in, the two men have a fight about how much they don't want to confront the shit parts of their lives, and that's what led to the world being thrown into chaos. Frank explains that if the spike is removed from the spot, the barrier between Cool World and the human world will be open, and the chaotic energy of Cool World will consume everything. Jack hesitates on helping, wallowing in his self-pity, but his neighbor, a Cool World fangirl, who overheard most of this, suggests that she can take Frank instead. So it all leads to a big race for everyone to get to the Union Plaza Hotel and stop Holly from doing the inevitable. Frank chases after Holly and manages to catch her near the top of the hotel, only for him to die at the hands of her while she was changing into a doodle. As Holly reaches the top, she pulls the spike of power from the roof, and chaos seeps out from Cool World, just like what happens in the movie, hopefully with a lot better animation. As every human starts turning into doodles, and Holly relishes in the power and the praise from her cult. However, that's pretty short-lived, as Jack Deeves flies in as insane Super Jack and gets into a fight with Holly for using him like she did and ruining his life, since he blames her for the murder of the guy who slept with his wife, since she was the one driving him mad. It ends with Jack putting the spike back in place, both Holly and Jack returning to human form, and Holly trying to push Jack over the tower, only for him to grab her on the way down, as they follow the same path as Frank and splat to the ground. Jack dies with the thought of finally being free of Cool World's influence, and Holly dies with some levity, as she finally got what she wanted deep down, to feel content, to feel free, and their death was their only release from their delusions and the reality that they hated so. Also, all the cult members all die in comedic ways. Yeah, they all kind of turned into doodles, but then they were trying to do doodle physics, and then they go Wile E. Coyote physics splat. The fountain pen breaks upon impact, and the Doctor and Nails were released to see the dead humans. We have a sad scene where everyone wallows over the deaths of the characters, mostly Frank. And the Doctor then has a brain blast. He asks the neighbor girl if Frank was killed by Doodle Holly or Noid Holly, and the neighbor replies that he was killed by a doodle. And then the Doctor immediately takes Frank and Nails back to the human world with the spike of power, as Cool World's primal power might be the only thing that could save him, in the Doctor's own words. They leave the girl and all Las Vegas traumatized, because that's just kind of funny. And the cult is still alive, are arrested by authorities, and are pretty much blamed for everything that happened. We cut back to Cool World, where Lynette, Nails, and the Doctor all wait for Frank to reincarnate as a doodle, and just like in the final product, he does. Frank can finally live a happy life with Lynette and Nails, and the Doctor puts himself in exile, as a way for him to take responsibility for all that he's done. as he becomes a hermit who lives in the crossroads between the human world and the cool world, as penance for causing all of this to happen. The final scene would be the Doctor sitting alone in his lab, tinkering with some doodad while listening to Marilyn Monroe's song Let's Make Love, the song that Hollywood would have played at the beginning. Remembering his daughter and love, now both lost forever. This could have been the darker alternative to Roger Rabbit Paramount was looking for, while still being compelling, coherent, and somewhat keeping to Bakshki's original vision. Granted, this version isn't perfect, but I tried my best to make it coherent and more put together than the actual movie, and it seemed interesting on my end. Or maybe I'm just blowing smoke up my ass, who knows. Unfortunately, we can only accept what we have now. All we have is this shitty little mess of a movie. There's nothing else to talk about with Cool World. Or so I thought. And this is where we get to where I've been finally building up all this time. You see, while I was doing research for this video, I discovered that there was a tie-in comic that DC released. And I read that comic. Oh boy. When I first found these comics, I thought they might provide some answers about the world building in Cool World, what the stakes in Cool World were, maybe answer some of the questions to help fill in some plot holes I had while watching the movie. But nope! I have more questions than answers after reading this stupid thing. I say that, but the comic is a lot more coherent than the movie, in that it has a relatively more straightforward narrative. It's a prequel, set some time before the events of the movie. In that time, Frank Harris has gone from a tortured army vet who lost his mom to a common crook holding convenience stores hostage. Yeah, that's a bit of a far cry from him being a hard-boiled detective. Is rent that high to where Frank has to get like 2 jobs? One being a criminal, he has to be a cop and a robber. I say that, but the comic is kind of a hero's journey for Harris, detailing how he becomes a cop. Sort of. He gets arrested after a heist gone wrong and is given a chance by this B cop to join the force, but he refuses because he's not that attached to the Doodles yet. He's bailed out by Hollywood, who in turn wants a favor from him. Guess what that favor is? We also see that Frank and Lynette have a history, starting from this comic. How she was a bar girl who was simping for Frank, but is also sad that he doesn't notice her like she does. If only he would stop giving Hollywood the time of day, he would realize that Lynette is perfect for him.
Why do guys only want bitchy bimbos who walk all over them?
And Hollywood is up to her old tricks again. She's still trying to seduce human men for her plan to leave Cool World, but that's not what the comic is about. In fact, she's just one of a huge ensemble cast in a 4-issue story, so I'm just going to try and get through this quickly because this video is already getting way longer than I expected it to be. The plot revolves around all the gangs in Cool World, who all look like Bakshki's versions of Dick Tracy villains, going after something called the ultimate weapon, this black box thing that gives whoever has control of it the power to kill Doodles. This comic also details how Frank and Nails meet for the first time, as they both get involved in this underbelly rat race, forced to work together. And we also see that Holly's goons and Sparks are involved in this. And Sparks, I guess, is Holly's boy toy before he becomes an informant for Frank. Oh yeah, in the movie, he was kind of Frank's informant. The movie didn't explain it. And some new faces that can be pretty obnoxious. I mean, what else is new? The Doodles are obnoxious. That come from worlds outside of Cool World. Yeah, there's other worlds. More like it has factions within Cool World that aren't just the main Cool World city. None of these worlds are explored that much, or like, you know, how they work, why they work, just like how Cool World itself doesn't mention it, but at least we get to see them. There's Cool World, where all the demented Doodles reside in the twisted city we all know and love, or tolerate in most people's cases. There's Sweet Place, the only location that got a name drop in the movie, where all the happy, pleasant Disney talking animal and Archie Comics-ish Doodles reside in this big suburbia full of sunshines and rainbows. And finally, there's Vidville, a sterile metropolitan area obsessed with screens, advertisement, ratings, profit, and brain-rotting television. Man, can you imagine an entire world that's based around content and advertising to the consumer? Oh man, how dystopian would that be? Hey, did I tell you about this video spawn? It also establishes that humans can come temporarily into Cool World via dreams. We see these dreamers interact with Cool World and its inhabitants like Hollywood, and we even see them in Sweet Place. Hollywood even tries to get a guy to come into Cool World via the dreams, and I thought this was Jack Deves, but apparently it's not. It's just some random guy named Richard or something. We even get a comment from Frank on how he sees Doodles come in and out of Cool World so often that he's just become numb to it. Any hope that Frank has to interact with another human fades away when their dreams end. God, this poor broken man leads such a sad life. There's a couple of neat dynamics that we see form throughout this comic. We see how Frank and Nails become good friends and eventually become cops in the last panel. And we see Frank's bond with Lynette and how feelings for her start to blossom in the last few pages of the last issue. I mean, hey, at least it's there. God, this shit takes me back to the Naruto and Hinata days of romance writing. Just don't show any romantic feelings until the very last arc. The fanfic writers will take care of it, it's fine. We also see a great couple of pages where Frank has to decide if he's gonna save Nails or go back to the human world. Don't ask, it's complicated. And he chooses to go back to the human world. But guess where he lands? Right at his mother's grave. Jesus, the universe just cannot give this man a break. But in all honesty, this has some pretty decent dialogue and actually shows some fantastic development of Frank's character, further developing his trauma and making his paranoia of returning to the human world that we see in the movie make a lot more sense. I won't spoil everything that happens in the comic, but it's pretty silly and you're not going to get a lot of answers about what's going on. But if you want to see more of the setting and learn a bit about the characters, go find the comic and read for yourself. It's only 4 issues, so it's not that long of a read. I will say these comics are pretty hard to find. I found some scanned copies online, but the website I was using had more pop-up ads and a same-day fans translation of a new One Piece chapter. Maybe if you're not cheap, you can find the physical copies online. There's also a tie-in comic that's an adaptation of the movie, and maybe that has some additional information to help understand the movie and its plot, but I can only find these comics for very expensive prices on eBay, so I'm not going that far. Look, man, I'm already losing money because I have to buy the DVD off Amazon. I'm not going to spend any more money on this than I have to. But if you've managed to find these comics and give them a read, just let me know in the comments if there's any more information or if it's more of just the same thing. Oh, and there's also a Cool World video game where you play as Jack Deves in this shitty side scroller, but I'm not going into it. That's it for me. I'm tapping out. I'm tapping out. So despite the fact that I've been mostly negative on this movie rather than positive, I still like Cool World. It is definitely not on the same level as Roger Rabbit, or even some of Bashki's other films, but there is something about the chaotic nature of this movie, and its open-ended, half-written storytelling, God, that's fucking pretentious, that keeps me coming back and theorizing and overanalyzing to this day. Like a D&D game where the game master hasn't written the whole session, so he and the players have to make up shit as they go along. If you're not a D&D fan, I swear that metaphor makes sense. It's reasons like this that made me understand why it has a cult following and why it was such a disappointment for many of Bashki's fans. This was meant to be Bashki's return to the silver screen, with a project he was extremely passionate about in a new experimental blending of mediums, and yet the whole thing exploded like a Molotov cocktail, not just in the production, but when it actually released. Audiences get uncomfortable with Bashki's movies, but this one left them uncomfortable for all the wrong reasons.
Listen, I saw this in a theater, and it was an embarrassment, man. I just felt so much secondhand embarrassment being in there with people. It was one of the cringiest movie-going experiences because everybody in the theaters is like, you know, what is this?
But the story doesn't have a completely bad ending. Mancuso Jr. went back to producing horror films, and Bashki retired from big-budget movies altogether to focus on painting. And you know what? He seems to be in a better place. Even now, he looks back on the movie not quite with hatred, but kind of like a mixed blessing. Hating the Hollywood process, he praises the art and animation as the best he's ever done, and gives a lot of credit to the artists and animators who helped bring his crazy vision to life. You can tell that art is where his true passion lies, and in a strange way, that's kind of wholesome. He still kept animating, mostly for TV and in the independent scene, and I think he's pretty content with that. I think he's just been hesitant to tackle the Hollywood system again, and I can't really blame him for that, man. Why would he go back to a place that just twisted his passion project into something unrecognizable and kicked him into the dirt? You can think of Cool World in that case as a cautionary tale about what happens when avarice and passion meet together and just create pettiness. But I think there's more to it than that. In these times where studios are creating soulless products meant to pander to mass audience appeal, maybe it's time we look back with a more critical lens, not just this movie, but at the man who created it, the man who created the first X-rated animated movie, the man who unapologetically put his life, views, and feelings of the world on the silver screen in all its bleak, off-color, and bloody detail. The man who dedicated his life to pushing the boundaries of animation, proved that it's a medium not just for kids, but one that could be experimented with like any other art form and made for the enjoyment of adults. For Batchke, the only animation that was done was by Disney or companies trying to copy Disney, a model that's not really changed to this day. But if it wasn't for Batchke going wild and paving the way for others, we wouldn't have the adult animations that are cornerstones of modern culture. We wouldn't have The Simpsons, we wouldn't have South Park, we wouldn't have Futurama, we wouldn't have Rick and Morty, we wouldn't have BoJack Horseman, we wouldn't even have Invincible, one of the most critically renowned adult animations of the last decade. I realize most of these examples are TV shows rather than movies, but maybe filmmakers can take a little page from Batchke's book. Put your ideas on the page, no matter how insane or unappealing they might be. Definitely give them a few drafts, but never give up on your passion projects, no matter how demented, violent, or even offensive they might be to a general public. Because odds are your work will be seen by those seeking inspiration, and they might resonate with the truth that you've brought to them, with what you've made, and find what you do very cool. This has been Kenji's Corner. I'm DuskNinjaKenji. This is my corner, and if all of this has not convinced you to give this movie a shot, just watch Roger Rabbit, man. It's way better. This is the best. Oh, shit.